Welcome to the Joe Miller Show, KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. This show is made possible by the McPherson Tax Defense Group, 1-800-BEAT-IRS, beatirs.com, BEAT IRS, serving Alaskans, Americans since 1978 with 2 generations of tax defense attorneys. We've got Rachel Alexander on. Rachel, of course, is a perennial guest on our program. She could probably take over the mic herself. I might let her do it this segment. She's the senior editor of The Stream, political columnist, founder of Intellectual Conservative, writes for a number of outlets that you're very familiar with, Town Hall, Human Events, The Christian Post, Right Wing News. She received awards for her writing. She has her Juris Doctorate, and she's here to talk to us about Paul Ryan, whether he'll be elevated to the speaker and whether that's a good idea. Rachel, thanks for coming back on the Joe Miller Show.
Thanks for having me on. And no, you don't want me taking over because I'm covering the World Congress of Families Conference in Utah this week, and I'm not getting much sleep either.
Oh, well, that's a bad mix. The host and the guest are sleep deprived. Well, let's talk about.
Sound like liberals.
That's right. So, Paul Ryan, tell us a little bit about Paul Ryan, where we're at in the speaker's race, what you think is going to develop, and kind of give us an overview, too, of what you think about Paul.
Well, you know, as we discussed right before, I mean, I have mixed opinion of Paul Ryan. I mean, he's not as conservative as some of us would like him to be, but on the other hand, is he an improvement over Boehner, and is he going to make a difference as House Speaker? And so I think a lot of that, it comes down to that. And you know, as I've told you before, you know, one of my close friends is Congressman David Schweikert, and he said that, you know, the real problem, you know, with getting things done in the House is not necessarily conservative versus liberal. It's establishment versus reformer. And so ever since this House Freedom Caucus came into existence when the Republicans, you know, swept the House in 2010, these guys have used some muscle. And they're the ones who got rid of Boehner. They're the ones who stopped McCarthy from, you know, trying to replace Boehner. And what they want, and you got to give these guys some, you know, credibility, is they want someone who's going to do the reform. So even though somebody like a Jason Chaffetz has a higher, you know, American Conservative Union rating than Paul Ryan, Chaffetz wouldn't agree to a lot of the reforms that would help start pushing through some Republican legislation. They sat down with Paul Ryan, and Paul Ryan agreed to almost all of their demands. I think there's one he didn't agree to, which was that getting rid of the speaker really easily. He wanted to get rid of that ability. But other than that, I mean, I look at it this way. It's like a Pyrrhic victory versus winning the war. And if you get a Ryan in there, you might not have your Pyrrhic victory on some of these, you know, conservative issues that he supports or doesn't support. But you're going to win the war because he's going to change House procedures to get around being forced to compromise with Democrats.
There's a huge debate over this whole thing. Of course, I've got a lot of friends in the Freedom Caucus, and a majority of them are supporting Paul Ryan. So obviously that makes me pause before going guns blazing against him. But the problem is it all boils down, Rachel, to integrity. And you've got to basically believe that Paul Ryan and his commitments, that he'll remain true to them. And the problem with that, and this is what I've said before on this show, this guy, at least when he's campaigned for office, has rhetoric that does not match action, and that's an integrity issue. If you go out to your constituents and say, I'm a conservative, I'm going to vote for freedom, I'm going to vote for liberty, I'm going to vote as a fiscal conservative, and you turn around and do the opposite, you've lied to your constituents. So maybe there's a heightened level of responsibility that he feels he has to his word when he makes the commitment to the Freedom Caucus, but I'm worried that he's going to actually maintain the commitment that he's making to the caucus to make these procedural changes.
I mean, I think he'll stick with the procedural changes. It's just his votes on the other, you know, conservative issues that you have to worry about. And I look at it this way. He's got a 90% American Conservative Union rating. That's pretty darn good. He's not that far off. And the thing is it's the speaker's job is a thankless job. Nobody wants it. He may be as good as we're going to get because, you know, as speaker, your main job is flying around the country fundraising. I mean, part of the thing Ryan says he wants to change is he wants to start letting House members have the Fridays off so they can actually spend time with their families. I mean, he knows that's half the reason he did not want to be speaker is because he doesn't want to just spend his whole life flying around the country doing fundraisers. So, right, I mean, I agree with you. He's not the perfect candidate, but, you know, number one, he could be as good as we're going to get to do that thankless job. And number two, he does appeal to moderates as well. So he might actually be able to get stuff done because the conservative wing generally likes him as well as the moderates.
And I absolutely understand what you're saying and what my friends in the Freedom Caucus are saying about this. It's just really hard to stomach things like his vote to fund executive amnesty, the vote to fund Obamacare. I mean, all of these things, you just go down the line, and that's, of course, what makes him attractive to moderates, that he's not going to stand up and actually fight the good fight. And that's the issue that we're faced with right now, is that we've got a country that, whether it's a Republican or Democratic administration, continuing to go the wrong way. So if you elect a speaker that's just going to be a go along, get along, even though you've changed the procedural aspects, assuming that he is a man of his word, that he does make those changes, is he really going to effectuate, or are there going to be enough votes in the House to effectuate the kind of contrast and combat with the left that needs to happen to push back on that agenda?
Maybe I'm just trying to be a half-glass full person, but I just look at it this way. I mean, at least we got rid of Boehner. Who would have thought that? And we're going to somebody who is more conservative. Granted, he's not what we want. He's not like a Trey Gowdy. And, what's so disappointing is, why isn't Trey Gowdy going to remain in Congress? I mean, I'm guessing he got scared off. He couldn't stand the old guard, the establishment, the fact that they were just beating up on him. I think all the best conservatives get scared off from being speaker.
Well, look at Michelle Bachmann. I mean, that was a quirk, too. You've got to ask yourself, why are these people running from Congress?
Yeah, I think they just can't stand it anymore. I mean, as Congressman Schweiker talks to me, he's like, it's very defeating. You just get booted off these committees if you have principles, and you feel like, why should I keep going back? I mean, nobody cares. I'm just a number. I have no effect because I don't do any of the compromising. And as I wrote in another recent article, if you're a conservative, once you leave Congress, you're kind of a pariah. Nobody wants to hire you. You're not going to be able to be a lobbyist because you're not going to bring home the bacon.
Yeah, you can't cash in because you didn't play the cash game to start with. But one of the things that I see coming out of this that's positive, I mean, I don't know whether or not we'll get as much gain with Ryan as a speaker, but there is no doubt that the Tea Party has flexed its muscle, that it basically has renewed its impact to the political process. I think most pundits see this as a Tea Party deposing of Boehner. And I think that spells real opportunity to reinvigorate basically that grassroots movement that, at least in past elections, has been so decisive in turning, for example, control of the House over to the Republicans, and also putting a lot of other important pressure points against the left agenda.
That's exactly my take on it. When they were able to push Boehner out, this new House Freedom Caucus, I thought, all these detractors who said, the Tea Party movement's dead. It's just like the Occupy Wall Street movement. It came and it went. Nope, they were wrong. The Tea Party is alive and well, and who thought we could have gotten this far? And now the Tea Party's got muscle. And who knows where we could go from here? I mean, we might end up with, an even more conservative House at this point.
And it may be also, Rachel, that these procedural changes will strengthen the caucus's leverage over the body so much more that the speaker is actually kind of a minimal part of the whole arrangement. Again, I don't have any inside information on that, but it's my guess the reason that you have such a majority in the caucus supporting Ryan and these changes is because they understand that the leverage that they just exerted on getting rid of Boehner, getting rid or making sure McCarthy didn't get elevated, is going to play out now, perhaps with all major pieces of legislation.
That's right, and as well as Ryan, because, Ryan knows now that they might get rid of him just like they did Boehner. So, and somebody told me, and I didn't have a chance to double-check this, but they said that ability to remove the speaker right away has been in place since Thomas Jefferson. So it's not like, this is anything new.
Right. Well, Rachel, I really appreciate your insights. I'll let you get back to prep for your conference that you're doing, and we'll put this up probably with your article later today that you wrote on this subject, the podcast. If anybody missed the first part of this, interesting insights. Appreciate Rachel, of course, those all the time on this show. Stay with us, The Joe Miller Show. We'll be right back.